गाइस, आप सबका स्वागत है फिर से एक बार मेरे चैनल पे। तो आज हम खेलने जाने वाले एक नया गेम और नई स्टार्टिंग करने वाले इस गेम की। इसका नाम है मैक अरीना, यानी इसका प्रोनाउंसिएशन अलग हुआ पर मैं मैक अरीना ही बोलता हूँ। पहले बार मैंने नहीं खेला है, पर दूसरी बार चलो ये मैंने पहली बार भी खेला था, पर तब मैं इतना अच्छा नहीं खेलता था। फिर मैंने उसको गेम ही खेलना छोड़ दिया, पर फिर से मुझे दिखा और आज मैं खेलने वाला हूँ फिर से एक बार, और आपको भी दिखाने वाला हूँ कैसा गेम है। तो आप भी डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं प्ले स्टोर पे, फ्री है। तो चलो फिर स्टार्ट करते हैं। ये मैं अभी बेसिक्स कर रहा हूँ, इसके पहले बेसिक्स बताते कैसे करना है। जब हम एक मैच स्टार्ट करने वाला है, तो अभी हम इसके मैच स्टार्ट होने का वेट करते हैं। ये चलो हो गया स्टार्ट। और अभी ये मैच हम ऐसे खेलते, इसमें आपको
oxidation reduction reactions or redox reactions. And finally, in our Big Bang equation, electrons are moving from one molecule to the other to form the products. Some movements consume lesser energy, and the extra energy is what gets released as the bang.
There's one final set of reactions you need to understand. What happens when some of the reactions give out heat, and what happens when others absorb heat. If a reaction gives out heat, it's called an exothermic reaction. And if it absorbs heat, it's called an endothermic reaction. You have exothermic reactions happening inside you. When glucose gets oxidized, energy is given out and is used to mint our energy ATP. Let me put this in a graph so that it will become very, very simple to you, okay? So you must have actually noticed that we have instigated some reactions to happen. That instigation was normally heat, and it's done because reactants are usually stable in their form. A small push or a trigger is needed to get them going and making them to react. This energy that is given is called activation energy. After this, the reaction becomes spontaneous, goes ahead and forms different products. Now, two things can happen. One, products can be at a higher energy level than the reactants, which means that they have absorbed the energy. In this case, the reaction is called an endothermic reaction. And if you ask me for some examples of an endothermic reaction, the biggest example would be photosynthesis, a process by which plants are capable of the magical process of making their own food. This is an example of an endothermic reaction. Now you can show this in an equation as carbon dioxide plus water plus energy in the presence of chlorophyll, giving you glucose and oxygen. Now, if products are at a lower energy level than the reactants, this means they are giving out energy, and this is called an exothermic reaction. Examples: digestion, respiration, and if you want to show respiration in an equation, you have C6H12O6, that is glucose plus oxygen, giving carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Some more examples: burning of a candle is exothermic, burning of natural gas is exothermic. Now, how would you show burning of gas? In an equation, CH4 plus oxygen gives CO2 and H2O. Even decomposition of vegetable matter into compost is an example of an exothermic reaction. The explosion that saved you and brought you back home safe and sound. As a matter of fact, all explosions are some of the most violent exothermic reactions.
To summarize the entire thing, from an examination point of view, there are basically four kinds of reactions that you will need to know. That's combination, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement. As far as combination reaction goes, two or more reactants join together to make products that are fewer in number but larger in the atom count. As far as decomposition goes, a reactant breaks apart to form products that are greater in number but smaller in atom count. Combination and decomposition are reverse of one another. As far as single displacement goes, an element reacts with a compound to form a new element and a different compound. The reactant element displaces an element in the compound that is most chemically similar. For example, a metal will replace a different metal. And as far as double displacement goes, two compounds react to form two new compounds. The reactant element displaces a chemically similar element twice. One element displaces the other element and vice versa. As far as redox reaction goes, if a substance gains oxygen during the reaction, it is said to be oxidized, and if a substance loses oxygen during the reaction, it is said to be reduced. And finally, exothermic reaction give out heat, and endothermic reaction absorb heat. That's it. The entire chapter is summarized for you. I'm sure you enjoy learning this way, and now you're very clear with the different kinds of reactions involved.
And that's all there is to it. Chemical equations and chemical reactions made very, very simple. We learned what chemical equations are and how it makes life simpler for us by summarizing the entire process of the reaction. Just one line. And know that chemical equations need to be balanced. That means the number of molecules, an element, the reactant, and the product need to be exactly the same. If not, you're violating the law of conservation of mass, and also you're making the great scientists and Royal boys, you're very, very angry. Remember that you can never change substance. Don't be tempted to change NaCl to Na2Cl Since that does not exist, don't put a coefficient in the middle of the formula. It just does not work. That is, don't write something like H2O. It's 2H2. Remember that a chemical equation is completely balanced only when the final set of coefficients are all whole numbers with no common factors other than 1. For example, even though 4H2 plus 2O2 giving you 4H2O is balanced, the best way to write it is 2H2 plus O2 giving you 2H2O.
Today, I'm going to lie to you. And I'm going to lie to you in a way where it's going to be challenging for you to find out which of them are lies and which of them are not lies. So the astute one amongst you will begin to understand what exactly when I'm saying I'm going to lie. Let's begin. When I was in 7th standard, they told me that light is a ray. It travels in beautiful straight lines, bounces off surfaces, following a very beautiful geometric law. Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. It bounces off, comes here, comes there, and it goes this way. Life is very beautiful. Until I went to 11th standard, and all of a sudden, which you will go there very soon, suddenly they told me light is a wave. It behaves as if you throw a rock into water, there are ripples. And light is very similar to that. And I said, okay, fine, I can live with that. And then I went to 12th standard. They told me light is a stream of particles. It's like you have a machine gun, you have a torchlight, open it, it's like you have a machine gun and start shooting out little bullets of light. And those little bullets they called photons. And I said, okay, now I'm beginning to get confused. To top it all, by the end of 12th, they told me, now we'll tell you what light is. Light is both wave and particle. Or they say neither wave nor particle. Which of it is it? They also said that, it depends upon what experiment you perform. Sometimes light will behave like a wave, sometimes like a particle, and by now if you're not confused, then you're not really listening. Because I was very confused. And then I began to ask the question, what really is it? In order to answer this, you have to go to the deepest parts of what science really is. And is science trying to say something about reality? Are we trying to find out what light is? Nobody can say. The best analogy to take would be to ask you this question. Have you seen a political map of India? You'll see that it has states, it has capitals. Very simple, please. Have you seen the physical map of India? It'll have mountains, and little rivers and all that. Then you have a road map, right? Which tells you, if you take these roads, you can go somewhere. Now, which of them is India? Is that a bad question? Or is it a difficult question to answer? Because which of them is India? Are all of them India? Is none of them India? Because if you try to build a map that has everything that has India in it, that India has, you'll have to build another India. So it's not the point at all. You want to build something that is not really the question where it's right or wrong, but we're trying to build something that is useful. Because what's the point of a roadmap? To tell you where to go. So if you have to find out where to go, which map will you go to? The roadmap. If you want to know how the cities are divided and how the capitals are, you go to the political map. If you want to find out where the rivers are, where the mountains are, you want to predict weather, you go to the physical map. Why am I saying this? It's because the real question is, we don't know what light really is. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what light really is. But we are building a map of what light could be. And if we imagine light to be that way, then we can make predictions in a better manner. That's what science tries to do. If I imagine light to be a ray, will it be useful? If I imagine light to be a wave, will it be useful? So the question, is light a ray or is light a wave, is really a pretty bad one because we don't know. So when is light as a ray useful? If
If you want to build and find images, you want to build a telescope, you want to build a microscope, imagining light to be a ray works really well. If you want to find out, and answer questions about why light sometimes interferes, there's something called interference that happens in light, something called diffraction, which you will learn later. If you want to understand why those happen, it's better to imagine light as a wave. If you want to understand certain other phenomena like photoelectric effect, think of light as a particle, a stream of particles called photons. And it's pretty surprising that we don't really know what light is, but depending on what situation it is, we imagine light to be one particular thing. Now this is what science tries to do. It tries to build a map of reality. And maps are never really a description completely of reality. But as long as they're close enough, they can start predicting what happened. So we'll finish this off by making one statement: the map is not the territory. You have a map of something? Let's find out how useful it is. So in this particular episode, we will treat light in the most simplest form it can be treated, as a ray. So you'll imagine light to be a ray that goes from one place to another, gets bounced off, the most beautiful way of thinking about it, the most simplest way. So let's make some predictions, looking at light as a ray and see how we can play with it. And let's really see what begins to happen. So how do we see? We see something around us, that's how we live, we watch everything around us. How exactly do we see? Long ago, there was an old man who predicted, theoretically, that light leaves from our eyes, goes in all possible directions. And when it hits something, light comes back to our eyes, and then when the light comes back to us, we see. Isn't that a problem? Because somebody switches off the lights, we're not able to see. If light goes out from our eyes, then we must be able to see whether there is outside light or not. So he wasn't the brightest candle on the cake. But now we know that there must be some way in which we are seeing, because we always need something called the source. Otherwise, we can't perceive things. So we need a source. We have a receptor called our eye. The light starts from the source, hits something, and comes back to our eye, and that's how we see. So all seeing happens using reflection, and we already know this. And typically, it's going to be irregular reflection, because some objects reflect regularly. You know this. And some objects reflect irregularly. All the objects we see around us, except heavily polished surfaces, are going to reflect irregularly. Simple, clean, and regular manner, we call that a mirror. So we make it so that we take a metallic surface, polish it so well, coat it back with something like mercury, so that no light, hardly any light passes through. Then what we have is called a mirror, because almost all of the light that hits it gets reflected. So does a mirror absorb some light? Yes, it does. Does a mirror let a little bit of light pass through? Yes, it does. But predominantly all of the light that hits a mirror gets reflected. So we can make a mirror in many shapes, right? So typically we can make it very straight. Take a straight metal surface and put mercury on one side, polish the other side, we get a plain mirror. We can make it curved this way, we can curve it this way, we can make a random shape as well, because you go to a mirror room in a fair, you see random mirrors, right? They show you fatter, thinner, squiggly. Yeah, so many mirrors we can take, but some of these mirrors are very, very interesting to study. And one of the first mirrors we'll take up is the most simplest one, and you've already learned about it a lot. It's called a plane mirror. We've all seen it, we see it every day. What does this plane mirror do? Right? Yeah, a very, very plain surface in front of you. All the light that hits you is gonna come back. And let us, for a minute, just quickly refresh based on some questions what all we know about plane mirrors. First one, let us imagine you're running away from a plane mirror and you look back, right, at your image. How fast will you see your image running away from you? As fast as you go? From your point of view? I don't know. What about a point? Right? A point is going to have what's called an image in a plane mirror, right? So we all see ourselves in the mirror, and we call that an image. So what exactly is an image? So I see somebody on the other side. We kind of understand that that person's not there, right? We do understand it's us because we raise our hand. The other person also raises his hand. So what exactly is an image? And in the case of a plane mirror, what kind of image is formed? Because you already also know that there are two kinds of images: a real image and a virtual image. Now, what is a real image? When light starts from a particular point and goes in two different directions, diverges, in other words, and if through some means we somehow bend them to make them so that they come back and meet, either using what's called a lens or what's called a mirror, use some device to somehow bring it to meet again. So rays diverging somehow meet again. At that point where they meet, we say that the image of the original point exists. So rays leave from their home, bid goodbye, diverge, and at some point, through circumstances or through the twists and turns of life, they meet again. And the point where they meet is called the image of this old point from where they started. That's a real image. But what if these 2 points don't diverge at all, don't converge at all? They start, they diverge, they keep diverging forever. They'll never meet, so there is no image, right? So that time, there is no real image formed. So We already understand what a real image is, and in order to understand what a virtual image is, we might have to go a little bit into what we mean by seeing things. So if you've already understood what's a real image, let's talk about a virtual image now. Now, what exactly is this virtual image? Because I think this is one of the most commonly misunderstood concepts. So let's say there's a mirror here, right, and there's a point here. Let us take two rays that leave from that point. One of the rays comes here, gets beautifully reflected by the law of reflection. Take another ray, it also gets beautifully reflected and goes that way. Will these two rays ever meet? Clearly not. They're going to keep diverging forever and ever and ever. So will there be an image formed? Not really. But if you keep an eye here, if a person stands there and watches these two rays coming towards him, what will he see? He will see two diverging rays. And this is the time when we think about how our human brain really sees. How do we see things? How do I know that there is, if I see something out there, a point, and I know that I'm seeing that point there, how do I know it's there? I know it's there because there are two rays leaving from that coming towards me. Those two rays might have come from some source, got reflected, they're coming towards me, and they hit my eye. And what does my brain say? Hey, listen, I see two rays diverging. Therefore, they must have come from a point over there, and it fixes that point over there. It sees one more point, fixes that point, and so on, and finally it sees an image. This is how we see. In other words, our brain runs something like a simulation. It says that if you see two diverging rays, they must have come from a point there. If they're diverging a lot, they must have come from a closer point. If they're diverging very little, they must have come from a very, very far away point. If the angle between them is very, very small, they must have come from a very far away point. And generalizing this, or rather taking the extreme case, if the two rays are parallel, they must have come from almost infinitely far away. So that's why sun's rays almost seem parallel to us. They're coming extremely far away, extremely far away distance. Now, how does this connect to what we call a virtual image? Because if you go stand there and you see the two diverging rays of the mirror, what would your brain infer? You would infer that those two rays must be coming from a point from behind the mirror. So your brain kind of runs that simulation, drawing the lines backwards. Your teachers might have told you, right? If two rays diverge, connect them backwards, it'll meet at a point. That's the virtual image. Why exactly? Because that's how our brain sees. So you put it back there, and your brain thinks that it must be coming from a point like that, which is why you go to a restaurant. You go stand there, all of a sudden the restaurant might seem a lot bigger than it actually is, and then you realize, okay, let's get some mirrors. Because in a quick instant, your brain does not understand that whether an object is here and the mirror is reflecting it towards you, or the object is really on the other side of the mirror. You don't know. So a virtual image is where there are diverging rays, and by the factor of a human being or some optical device standing there,